Okay. 10, Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 10, text number 3. Text number 3. Yeah. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jai Amudirayat. Text 3. Britya Lakshana Jigyasur Bhakta Kameshva Chodayat Bhavan Samsara Bijeshu Hridaya Grantashu Prabho Britya Lakshana Jigyasur Bhaktam Kameshva Chodayat Bhavan Samsara Bijeshu Hridaya Grantashu Prabho
Britya Lakshana
Jigyasur
Bhaktam Kameshva Jodayat
Kameshva Chodayat
Bhavan Samsara Bijeshu Hridaya Grantishu Prabho
Nityalakshana Jigyasur Bhaktam Kameshva Chodayat Bhavan Samsara Bijeshu Nityalakshana Jigyasur
Bhaktam Kameshva Chodayat
Bhaktam Kameshva Chodayat
Bhavan Samsara Bijeshu
Bhavan Samsara Bijeshu
Hridaya Grantishu Prabho
Hridaya Grantishu Prabho. Ladies. Nityalakshana Jigyasur Bhaktam Kameshva Chodayat Bhavan Samsara Bijeshu Hridaya Grantishu Prabho Nityalakshana Jigyasur Bhaktam Kameshva Chodayat Bhavan Samsara Bijeshu Hridaya Grantishu Prabho Britya Lakshana Jigyasu, desiring to exhibit the symptoms of a pure devotee. Bhaktam, the devotee. Kameshu, in the material world, where lusty desires predominate. Achodayat, has sent. Bhavan, your lordship. Sangsara bijeshu, the root cause of being present in this material world. Hridaya grantishu, which desire for material enjoyment. is in the core of the hearts of all conditioned souls. Prabhu, oh my worshipable Lord. Translation, oh my worshipable Lord, because the seed of lusty desires, which is the root cause of material existence, is within the core of everyone's heart. You have sent me to this material world to exhibit the symptoms of a pure devotee. And purport by Srila Prabhupada. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu has given considerable discussion about Nityasiddha and Sadhana Siddha devotees. Nityasiddha devotees come from Vaikuntha to this material world to teach, by their personal example, how to become a devotee. The living entities in this material world can take lessons from such Nityasiddha devotees and thus become inclined to return home back to Godhead. A Nityasiddha devotee comes from Vaikuntha upon the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and shows by his example how to become a pure devotee, anyabhilasha shunyam. In spite of coming to this material world, the Nityasiddha devotee is never attracted by the allurements of material enjoyment. A perfect example is Prahlad Maharaj, who was a Nityasiddha, a Mahabhagavata devotee. Although Prahlad was born in the family of Hiranyakashipu, an atheist, he was never attached to any kind of materialistic enjoyment. Whoop. Pardon me, I forget to turn this off. Materialistic enjoyment. Desiring to exhibit the symptoms of a pure devotee, the Lord tried to induce Prahlad Maharaj to take material benedictions, but Prahlad Maharaj did not accept them. On the contrary, by his personal example, he showed the symptoms of a pure devotee. In other words, the Lord himself has no desire to send his pure devotee to this material world, nor does the devotee have any material purpose in coming. When the Lord himself appears as an incarnation within this material world, he is not allured by the material atmosphere, and he has nothing to do with material activity, yet by his example, he teaches the common man how to become a devotee. Similarly, a devotee who comes here in accordance with the order of the Supreme Lord shows by his personal behavior how to become a pure devotee. A pure devotee, therefore, is a practical example for all living entities, including Lord Brahma. I'll read the verse again. Oh, my worshipable Lord, because the seed of lusty desires, which is the root cause of material existence, is within the core of everyone's heart. You have sent me to this material world to exhibit the symptoms of a pure devotee. The reason I picked the verse is because of our discussion the other day, 2 evenings ago, about Prahlad in his previous life and all of that. There's a nice document which will be circulated if it hasn't already been circulated that gives the Hari Bhakti Vilas explanation of Prahlad Maharaj's previous life. And, the details are there. It's directly from Hari Bhakti Vilas. The essence is glorification of the Shringa Chaturdasi Vrata. By circumstance, a Brahmana, by birth, had deviated. Something not so dissimilar from the Ajamila story, but he became attached to a prostitute and they were doing their business together. And lo and behold, they had a disagreement. And when they had a disagreement, she was pouting and he was angry. And in that circumstance, it was the appearance day of Lord Nrsingadev, and both of them stayed up all night long and fasted. They were like sleepless night. And they observed Nrsinga Chaturdasi Vrata unintentionally. So he was a fallen Brahmana, and the beginning part of that discussion the reference is Hari Bhakti Vilas, but Hari Bhakti Vilas is referencing Brihan Naradiya Purana, Brihan Nrsinga Purana. And in that little section, Prahlad is asking Lord Nrsingadev, how did I become your devotee? And he says, here's your history. So Sanatana Goswami is referencing, in his previous life, Prahlad was a fallen Brahmin attached to a prostitute. But even unintentionally, so it's good if you do intentionally, but even unintentionally, if the power of this vrata is so significant that even unintentionally, he was born as Prahlad. So Narada recognized, no, in the womb of Kayadu was a pure devotee because he had become purified. Now he was a fallen Brahmana, but wasn't a pure devotee, but pure devotee. And by Narada's instruction, then further edification. And then he taught what he taught and did what he did, and he exhibited the symptoms of a pure devotee. There's another explanation which we'll hear this evening. Another scriptural reference, and here's a third scriptural reference. And explicitly, the way that Prabhupada has structured the purport is he's a Nityasiddha, sent from Vaikuntha by the personality of Godhead to teach the way of pure devotional service to the Nityabuddhas. And Nityabuddhas can become sadhana siddhas through the association of siddhas of one kind or another. By devotees, one can become a devotee. So the personality of Godhead, sent Prahlad specifically to exhibit the symptoms of a pure devotee. Britya Lakshana. Lakshana means characteristics or qualities. Jigyasur, of a pure devotee. Britya Lakshana Jigyasur. So that was his service assignment. Exhibit the symptoms. So we have our definition of the symptoms. There's been a few discussions. We'll not tonight, but tomorrow night we'll discuss this nice word that indicates the characteristics of one who's merged in Krishna consciousness or merged in transcendence, pragya. We'll hear some more. And that's chapter 2, symptoms, lakshana. And from the characteristics of a thing, you can know the thing. Or the thing must show the characteristics. It's like, a brahmana is not a brahmana if he doesn't have the characteristics. The brahmana may have the birth, but the brahmana doesn't have the characteristics, isn't a brahmana. So then, in addition to the characteristics, repeatedly Prabhupada would teach, they must have the activities. Characteristics without the activities isn't a brahmana or isn't something. So then, if the characteristics of a pure devotee means that he engaged in pure devotional service. He exhibited the behavior, and when conducting his life, he was exhibiting the characteristics of. So we the Nityabhata fellows, we can take a look at Prahlad and understand what is a pure devotee in what he said and what he did, and the qualities that he exhibited consistently, very consistently from the tender age of childhood, Komara, Acharat Pragyo. There's the word Pragya again. The one who is sufficiently intelligent person. We'll hear some more tomorrow night on this particular topic. The characteristics of one who's situated in pure devotional service. And so how does this work? It's commonly, I mentioned this yesterday evening, 2 evenings ago, but a common explanation, at least a possible explanation, is different days of Brahma. In different days of Brahma, different Prahlads, different descriptions of Prahlad came, his prior life was this and that and the other thing. Then he became Prahlad. Different days of Brahma. So different explanations, different days of Brahma. That's one kalpabheda, one explanation. And there can be other explanations. The message, let's go back because this text 3 is in a context. So verses 1 and 2, I'll just read verses 1 and 2 from chapter 10. The Saint Narada continued. So the overall topic, this is Narada having a discussion with Yudhisthira. Yudhisthira's got the questions, Narada's got the answers. So Narada's speaking to Yudhisthira. Although Prahlad Maharaj was only a boy, when he heard the benedictions offered by Lord Nrsimhadev, he considered them impediments on the path of devotional service. Thus he smiled very mildly and spoke as follows. Text 2. My dear Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, here's my disqualification. Because I was born in an atheistic family, I am naturally attached to material enjoyment. So he's to exhibit the symptoms of a pure devotee. Saying these things, it's humility. He doesn't have attachment to material enjoyment. Like the opposite, because he's telling his classmates, no, don't waste your time playing. And then many other things we'll hear as we go forward with his teachings to his classmates. Therefore, kindly do not tempt me with these illusions. I am very much afraid of material conditions. Why is he afraid of material conditions? Well, it's risky territory. And we should also, a symptom of pure devotion is we're protected. At the same time, we know we're in risky territory. Like the example of landmines. If you know between where you are and where you want to go, there's landmines, but you don't know exactly where they are. You're going to be careful. And then there's procedures to find out where the landmines are. And so anyway, whether visible or not visible, the territory is a dangerous territory. Even for an elevated soul. Even for an elevated soul. Risky territory. And even an elevated soul can slip and fall. And so we're it's risky territory. I'm very much afraid of material conditions. And I desire to be liberated from materialistic life. He's already liberated. How do you know that? Muktir, it's the same. Muktir hidvanyata rupam svarupina. He has no affinity. He has no affinity. He's saying as if he does. And those that do, they're very much attracted to material life. And those persons may be aspiring for liberation. I want out of here. It's a crazy place. Too risky, too dangerous, and too much suffering and so forth. Let's go back because we're going to be hearing how he's teaching his classmates. He goes through this whole elaborate thing about the allures, the misuse of human life, because in the growing up and then the 100 years and so many years, this and that and the other thing, the perils of materialistic life. And he's giving transcendental association to his classmates, but here he's speaking to Lord Nrsingadev as if he's one of his classmates, attracted by the Lord. So it's humility, but it's knowledge at the same time. He knows the risks. And he's cautious, wisely. So it behooves us to be also wisely cautious. Even we know that we're protected by the personality of Godhead and by Bhakti Devi, by Bhakti itself, we're protected. But it doesn't mean when you're protected, you drop your guard. That's part of your protection, part of the bhakti protection. You stay away from, and therefore the necessity. I mean, I'm going to be discussing this a little bit, but the teachings of Rishabdev to his sons parallel very closely the teachings of Prahlad to his classmates. The points that are made by Rishabdev to his sons. The points that are made by Prahlad to his classmates. The points, the principles are quite similar. They parallel a lot. Just language is different audience. But he's speaking to his classmates like they're adults. The lures of sex life and so forth. Same. Now here he's speaking to Lord Nrsingadev and saying the principle, hridaya grantishu, the desire for material enjoyment, which is in the core of the hearts of all conditioned souls, and specifically kameshu, lusty desires predominate. He's speaking to the Nrsingadev, but he's a little boy. What do little boys understand about lusty desires? No, lusty desires may, as indicated conventionally here, the number one attraction is sex life. That's previously mentioned. Then the purport. I read the purport for text number 2, first sentence. materialistic life means attachment to the body and everything in relationship to the body. This attachment is based on lusty desires for sense gratification, specifically sexual enjoyment. Now, lusty desire has a very pointed and specific, but it also has implications that are broad. Lusty desires in a broad sense is senses, sense objects, desire to enjoy the sense objects through the senses. That's lust. Then there's, number one in the hit parade. And consistently according to the Bhagavatam, that's the indication. And for that reason, Prabhupada speaks about it very openly to all kinds of audiences. But he does so for a reason, because the Bhagavatam does the same, and he's just following the Bhagavatam. So he doesn't hold punches. He is very specific. Exactly the same teaching in Rishabhadev's instructions to his sons. Exactly the same. Lusty desire. Meaning sexual attraction. And, it makes the world go round. But it makes sense. It has to be propagation of the species for the world to go round. There's one thing that takes care of that. Lusty desires. I was just listening to this morning. 5th Canto Bhagavatam, Rishabhadev's instructions, chapter 5. And apparently, from hearing how Prabhupada was speaking, it was a new audience, and he dwelled on the point like painfully again and again. Like, move on, please. But he didn't move on. He was drilling. And, that which causes birth is sex attraction. I mean, it was his very explicit point again and again and again and again and again. And therefore it's inherent within living entities for purpose of propagation of the species, but also as soon as there's a body, it's there. And then comes the regulation, and then comes, regulation means not unrestricted, but restricted. I mean, it's a whole long discussion. So Prahlad understands why he was sent, and he understands what he's supposed to do, and for whom he's supposed to do. For the Nityabadhas that's their life. So going back, when Lord Nrsingadev offered at the end of chapter 9, Lord Nrsingadev offers, I know you don't want, take it anyways. I want you to become the replacement for Hiranyakashipu, the king of demons. Now you're a devotee, you're a pure devotee, but he has a kingdom, and someone has to take his place, because if you don't take his place, then there's another demon going to take his place. They'll have to worry about that guy. So you become the king, and he said, and Lord Nrsingadev specifically says, and enjoy the opulence. Now, what is that? It's not like asking him to indulge. But then immediately following, you'll be protected by your hearing and discussing my glories, and the contamination won't be able to touch you. You'll be protected. That's the bhakti protection. Okay, bhakti protection, but still be careful. With not be cavalier, or I do bhakti and now I can indulge. That is contradictory in principle. Is there such a thing? Yes, there is such a thing. as mixed. And the mixed, when properly performed, is to get to unmixed. It's a detail, but it's a nice detail. The whole section of Prahlad, the story of Prahlad finishes with chapter 12. He becomes king and things happen. And then chapter 13, Yudhishthira wants to ask, he asks Narada, what about people that aren't there? What's the hope for those people that are on that elevated platform of Prahlad? Could you describe the Varnashram system? So the 5 chapters. In the 5 chapters, there's this discussion. Particularly Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes bhakti has 3 features. The unmixed has already been discussed. Shuddha Bhakta, Prahlad. And then there's mixed devotion. Devotional service that's mixed with fruitive activities and speculation. So Jnana Mishra Bhakti, Karma Mishra Bhakti, and the system of Varnashram, I mean, this is Vishwanath, it's not specifically the verses. It when properly performed, the performance of prescribed duty, offering the results to the Supreme, it's Nishkam Karma Yoga, not Bhakti. Bhakti as the foundation, but Bhakti, it has to be Bhakti as the foundation, otherwise it's ineffective. There's no real karma yoga. Although I have desire, I therefore I'm doing activity, I offer the result to Krishna. Then one's protected from that desire. But it sounds a little risky. It's risky. It's purifying, but it's much easier to perform not purely than purely. And in the purely is Nishkam Karma Yoga. And that's the effect of Varnashram, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And that's how this whole canto ends. Steps leading to pure bhakti, and then there's pure bhakti. But we have it's imperative to have this nice example of Prahlad. He's teaching, and then supposing you're not on that platform, you don't whine and lament. You, to your capacity, and recognize with honesty what's my position, and it's the nishkam part, your prescribed duty, and offer the result to Krishna. Bhagavad Gita, Karma Yoga, but Nishkam Karma Yoga. There can be Karma Yoga with this more on the Kama than the Nishkama. That is, I call it the 2-pocket program. So much for Krishna, so much for me. So much for Krishna, so much for me. Me, Krishna, Krishna. I was discussing the other day, and then there was some questions about it, where I'm not, I'm at the center. Krishna's in the picture, but I'm at the center because it's really about me. It's not about Krishna's satisfaction. I can say Krishna's satisfaction, but so that's not pure devotion. And it's hard to have an honest position where I acknowledge I'm at the center. I don't want the implication in bondage. I don't want the suffering of bondage. It's in other words, just to say the same thing differently, without karma yoga, say it the other way, with karma yoga, then there is sufficient detachment that knowledge becomes more accessible. Like knowledge, not just theoretical, but knowledge of being situated in knowledge. So I'm a karma yogi doing cultivation of knowledge more deeply and profoundly than before. And that will help me. So from karma mishra bhakti, kama mishra bhakti, or karma mishra bhakti to gyan mishra bhakti. But it's still mixed. But it is what it is. It purposefully can be elevating, but to get to the Prahlad Maharaj stage and have a real clear picture of what the Prahlad Maharaj stage looks like. That's why it precedes the other descriptions. He has no interest. The verse that we just read, he's speaking, these first few verses, he's speaking as if he has interest. And that's his humility. It's not his factual position. That's okay. It's perfectly okay, more than perfectly okay. Here's a little example. I'm going to end. A little example. For example, Krishnadas Kaviraj. He writes in Chaitanya Charitamrita that I'm lower than a worm in stool. And I have more attraction for enjoyment than Jagai and Madhai. And it's not just cute. It's like, it's how he feels. As Prahlad feels this way, although he's exhibiting the symptoms, the lakshana, of one that has no material attraction. And there's only one thing, pure devotion, only one thing. Anya abhilash shunyam. Jnana karma janavratam. Rupa Goswami. But it's Prahlad, or anyone else situated in pure devotional service. And humility is prerequisite. Because how can one go further if one isn't humble? One must be humble to go forward. Dainya, or humility, or profound kind of humility. At the same time, a profound enthusiasm to connect with the purpose of life, connect with Guru Krishna Prasadi Bhai Bhakti Lata Bij. And stay there and continue to purify further. Not just, the first few years of Krishna Bhakti and then, like we discussed yesterday, then become complacent. It's not harm. It's, it's fantastic, but it's incomplete at the same time. And so renewed enthusiasm and encouragement and, things like what we're doing right now, just reading and hearing, same as what Prahlad was told by Lord Nrsimhadev, the end of the previous chapter. You'll be protected. And because it's what Lord Nrsimhadev wanted for him to come, it's what he does. He takes the kingdom and he becomes a grihastha, and he has children, and he does, the grihastha pure devotee program. Okay. Any discussion? Abrupt ending. What to do? Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for this nice discussion, Maharaj. I'm a little confused about Prahlad is Nitya Siddha, then how is that he was in his previous life having that other...
The answer is, it's a different day of Brahma.
Oh, so meaning in one day of Brahma, he
He's
can
this,
be
the other
Nitya
day
Siddha.
he's
Okay.
that, and then
Yes, Maharaj.
there's other explanations. There's another day of Brahma. We'll hear it tonight.
Yes, Maharaj. And I have one more question, Maharaj. Just like we hear that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to hear from Gadadhar Pandit
Yes.
the pastimes of Prahlad Maharaj and Dhruv Maharaj again and again and again
Yes,
and again.
right.
So is there any specific reason?
Pure
that,
devotion.
So, thank you, Maharaj.
Someone in the back? Hand up. Yes? No? Okay. Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj, for a nice class. I was thinking like continuation from yesterday's Bhagavatam class, like as grihasthas, how can I prioritize in acting in such a manner that we can get the mercy of the Lord? So in Kali Yuga, it's very difficult. Like we attend a class, we learn, how to be compassionate or consider the needs, interests, and concerns of the other people. We get that mood, but then when we come into real life, people don't have the patience or energy, and they don't just focus on their own, what is in it for me, and they keep going. And when I face similar situations, then I also shift into a mood of, okay, just focus on what is in it for me and keep going. So it's very challenging. So yeah, but when my sadhana is good, yeah, sometimes I feel that thoughts come, but then again, it's deteriorating more and more as things get. So yeah.
The punchline is, the question is, for those who are grihasthas like me, how to come to the stage of executing my grihastha duties where I'm not at the center.
Yeah.
But Krishna's at the center.
Yes.
That's the question.
Yeah.
Well, I'll refer, because I just heard it this morning, the discussion that I heard this morning is Prabhupada speaking on Rishabdev's instruction to his sons. And in his instructions to his sons, there's that initial verse where he's instructing his sons, condemning their affinity, if there is such affinity for material enjoyment, get rid of it and take instead the association of pure devotional service. And then there's the second verse, that's the 551. Second verse is Mahat Sevam Dwaram, Ahur Vimuktes. So that's the principle of what to do. So then who are the Mahats and how do you serve the Mahats? And it's not singular, it's plural. They're great devotees. And then to edify, Prabhupada was saying that the ideal is detachment from sex life. But detachment from sex life doesn't mean that one cannot become an acharya if one has family life. And then he went on to say, of the 12 Mahajans, 7 were grihasthas. But Mahajans. But they weren't taking the position of grihastha out of affinity for sense enjoyment. But their affinity was towards the glorification of the personality of Godhead. So dedicating one's situation, the grihastha situation, and all of what is involved, the home, without the long list, it's all meant for the service to Krishna. It's possible. It's it's ideal. For different persons, it's ideal. For other persons, the sun immediately or from directly from brahmachari life to sannyas life, that's ideal. Etc. But it Mahat Sevam Dwaram, and dedication of the facility, the resource, same as what Lord Nrsingadev told Prahlad, accept the kingdom, accept the opulences of the kingdom. Because his father had, opulences, and you take his seat, you have the opulences. But don't become attached to them. And here's how to, so that's the how to, Mahat Sevam, and engage in Shravanam Kirtanam, Vishnu. To your capacity, each of us has different capacity, but to your capacity. And for what purpose? For the purpose of the glorification of the personality of Godhead, to spread, to experience and to expand his glories. With that purpose in mind, then one can advance in Grihastha life. Rishabdev didn't tell his sons, don't get married. Some didn't. Some did. Most of them did, but some didn't. But that was not the principle. The principle was the dedication of body, mind, and words to the service. So there's regulation, there's boundaries, or there's restrictions, but the principles go in the direction of okay. Anything else? Okay.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. When you were speaking about Nishkama Karma Yoga, etc., I was reminded of the discussion between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Rai about the goal of life. And I was recollecting the verses. They were really very important verses that Mahaprabhu just dismisses them. First is the Varnashram verse. Then Ramananda Rai says, Yat Karoshi, Mahaprabhu says external. Then he says Sarvadharman Parityaja, he says external. Then he says Brahmabhuta Prasannatma, he says external. And then finally when he says the verses Jnane Prayasa, Mahaprabhu says yes, that's internal, speak more. So does that mean that our internal life really begins when we begin to chant and hear? Is that why Mahaprabhu considered that as internal?
Well, I'm not sure what you're asking, because there's the beginning stage, and there's the intermediate stage, and there's the advanced stage. So are you asking, does the beginning stage start when you're engaged in hearing and chanting? That's your question?
Yeah, and then it goes further, yeah.
Well, that there are yes. There's 9 processes of devotional service, and they begin with hearing and chanting. Then the other 7 flow from, or layered upon, okay?
So that means the soul is actually engaged in its natural activities of hearing and chanting. That's why Mahaprabhu is saying that. Yeah,
The language, you're speaking fast. The language is real important. So, living entities, birds, they have a tendency to sing. They have a tendency to hear and chant. So, hear and chant about what? So, when there is the beginning, the seed is the beginning of this association with sadhus who are engaged in devotion, who are carrying bhakti, then there's the opportunity in sadhu sangha to engage in hearing and chanting about Krishna. And that's the beginning. Now, is it possible to have a beginning before that beginning? Like take prasadam. Is that a beginning before the beginning? Is that something that can help one become attracted to the activity of hearing and chanting about Krishna, even before? Yes. So there are preliminary activities that can help prepare one for hearing and chanting. But then when those that take prasadam, is that devotional service or not? Or is it just preparing themselves for devotional service that begins with hearing and chanting? I'm responding to your question. Yeah. Trying to, anyway. Supposing someone touches Bhagavad Gita. Supposing someone, like this Brihan Narasingha Purana, where in his previous life he was a fallen Brahmin, prostitute hunter. No, where's the hearing and chanting? And accidentally he observed Nrsimha Chaturdasi Vrata. So, because you're asking a very pointed question, the response needs to be a little careful. In general terms, devotional service begins with hearing and chanting, but there can be activities of devotional service that are not specifically hearing and chanting. Supposing someone sees the deity form, they may not even know what it is, but there's etc. No hearing and chanting yet. You want to add something?
So, just thinking that, like you said, anyway, I need to frame my thoughts. So can that be considered Ajnata Sukriti? Can we make that distinction that, before the hearing and chanting happens, it's Ajnata Sukriti?
Well, go ahead.
Sorry. Because, we learn from Madhurya Kadambini also that Shraddha means there's this faith in the words of scripture. That's the description of Shraddha. So when somebody is taking prasadam or, seeing the deity form, but it's not intentional, they're getting benefit, it's bhakti, and yet can we categorize that as Ajnata Sukriti?
Well, let me ask you, or ask Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Does that Ajnata Sukriti fall in the category of devotional service or not?
Yes.
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 His question was, does devotional service begin with hearing and chanting? And that was, so.
Okay. Yeah, in a broad. Yeah.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. So, Maharaj, you were mentioning about Jnana Mishra Bhakti and Karma Mishra Bhakti. And recently I was also listening to one class in which it was being spoken how Bhakti can be practiced in the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance.
Yes.
And I was really identifying with that.
You really what?
Identifying with it. How,
okay. Well, we see it.
We see it, and so my question would be, it was described in great detail, like some detail as to you're going to bed late, but you want to get up early to go for Mangalarti maybe. That would be actually mode of passion or almost ignorance, because you're not getting enough sleep, and that is almost considered mode of ignorance, bhakti, because I'm going to still wake up in the morning.
Okay.
And so I was just, my question was, how can one become fixed in that sense that I want to practice bhakti in the mode of goodness and beyond, and to be consistent with that.
Well, that takes purity. Consistency takes purity. So then to get to the purity, then there's regulation. When there's regulation, it means my tendency is to be unregulated. So, but I'm accepting restrictions voluntarily because it'll help me become purified, and thus, more eligible. By following regulation, there's strength. And then the distraction tendency, the modes of nature, guna and karma influences are slackened or subside. So how do I become steady? By purity. And then purity through the medians of regulation, of that which is not pure. And strive for that regulation. And be as consistent as possible. Now that's just on the material side. It's not fully spiritual yet, but how to get to the spiritual, which is what your question is, where it stays. Not again, on again, off again. Regulation, abhyasa, with regulation, with proper rules or boundaries. Like this classic example that Prabhupada would speak about. We don't say no sex life, we say no illicit sex life. We don't say no eating, we just say restriction of these foods, etc. There's restriction, and stay with it. And supposing one deviates for whatever the reason, get back to the regulation. Regret the deviation and get back to regulation. And, good association that and regular hearing and all those nice things that help us. Okay?
Can
More.
I just, it's something like you think, like you put it in a box. There was my morning program box, and then there was my reading box, my Shastra reading box, and now I'm in another box. So it's like the mind kind of puts, at least that's how I find myself. I'm in different boxes here.
Okay.
And the goal would be to kind of have it like a constant. You don't want to be.
Okay.
But
So you have to start somewhere. The regulation is a starting somewhere formula. And so things become compartmentalized or regulated. As you put it in this box. Then what's the goal? It's not just to become boxed in. It's just to become purified. And when purified, then devotional service becomes without the box, or without the requirements, without the restrictions, without the vidhis. It becomes something else, or at least potentially can become spontaneous. But that doesn't mean we neglect or discard or trash or feel uncomfortable with regulation. It's a great assist or asset, but that's not the essence. Bhakti is the essence, and spontaneous bhakti. Like the verse that we read yesterday morning, they have no purpose. The Vaikuntha Vasis. And it's not Goloka, it's Vaikuntha. They have no purpose, material purpose. Means they do have a purpose, but that's on another platform than the box program. It's quite okay. Be regulated. And be consistent, then sometimes. Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
You want to add something?
So we heard that the symptom of pure devotion is not wanting any material benediction.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just thinking, like, it seems to take a while, actually, for one to understand, what is the real benediction, what is real mercy in one's life. And what blocks it is attachment to some kind of material conception of life. Even that could be something in the mode of goodness.
Yeah.
And that seems to be even more difficult, actually, to recognize some kind of attachment to sattva, because it seems good, but yet it's a block in one's bhakti.
Yes.
Yeah. I guess it's a comment
block
and
in
a
attaining pure bhakti.
Yeah.
Not a block, but just go ahead, just editing.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering, like sometimes one has to go through so much suffering. I certainly see that in my own life, that something subtle that I didn't recognize, but, it seems like good, but yet not good. It seems to take a lot of suffering combined with, of course, hearing and chanting, which just shines so much light. But in trying to assist others also, serve others, we see that sometimes it's so hard to just convey something. I mean, because the attachment completely blocks, and they're not maybe even taking association in the right way, or they're not looking for the right thing. I mean, what is it? Is there something other than, of course, the standard things that one can do to recognize that? I mean, Prahlad Maharaj talks about it in the 5th, 6th chapter also, about just this attachment doesn't let someone see what is the root cause of their suffering.
An answer that I like is, Canto 1, Chapter 2, with knowledge and detachment causelessly arise from bhakti. So what you're describing, what you just described, is subtle this and subtle that and subtle the other thing. And how do I detect subtle this, subtle that, and the subtle other thing without intelligence or not proper knowledge, or the power of discrimination? So power of discrimination is awarded to somebody who is qualified and eligible. So you, all of us, need to make ourselves eligible for that discernment or this capacity to distinguish what is this subtle thing that's going on that seems to appear again and again, that's blocking. And if we don't have subtle intelligence, we won't even see it. We won't feel it. We won't, just carry on like a donkey. So it's awarded intelligence, discerning capacity is awarded to someone who's very sincere, and then Krishna gives them that discerning capacity, the intelligence. Dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupiyanti te. Tesham satata yuktanam. Bhajatam priti purvakam. So your question was, what can we do? And that's we strive in that direction. And then there's unsteadiness until we become steady. The remaining section of the 9 stages of bhakti, they flow much more quickly in comparison to the anartha-nivritti stage, which doesn't flow so quickly. I think it's time to end. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.